Bryophytes, mosses. They first grew on Earth around 540 million years ago. These are water-loving plants and require a specific type of environment or climate. Its ideal environment would be cool, moist, and dark areas, like in the shade, on a tree or rock. An interesting fact was that during the World War II, spangium, a certain variety of moss, was used to dress soldiers' wounds. In addition to absorbency, it was also found to have mild antibiotic properties. Mosses lack the true leaves, stems, roots, and buds we often associate with vascular plants. As a non-vascular plant, it doesn't have phloem or xylem, and the body of moss has no roots. Rather, it uses tiny threads to anchor itself to the stones, trees, or ground where it grows. They do not reproduce by seeds. A fertilized egg becomes an embryo, which then develops into a spore-producing body called the capsule or sporangium. When the sporangium are ripe, the spores are released into the air and they get blown away. And if they land in a moist place, they will grow into a new moss plant. They do not grow fruit for reproduction.
Pteridophytes, also known as ferns, first grew around 400 million years ago and were derived from club mosses. These plants could grow larger and were able to absorb water from the soil more effectively. They could do this because they have xylem and phloem, which means that they are vascular plants. They have large, true leaves and true roots. Ferns, like mosses, use spores for reproduction, and thus do not need fruit to distribute their seeds.
Gymnosperms, or cone-bearing plants, are the simplest of the seed-bearing plants today and derived from ferns. They first appeared on the Earth around 290 million years ago. Ferns evolved into gymnosperms because the use of seeds is the most effective way of spreading plants. Gymnosperms have well-developed true leaves and true roots and contain vascular tissue to carry water and nutrients through the plant. They use seeds, which are protected by a cone, for reproduction and thus do not need fruit.
Angiosperms, or flowering plants, first grew around 200 million years ago. They have true leaves and roots and contain vascular tissue, which allows nutrients and water to flow through the plant. Their reproductive structures are protected in the flower. They derive from gymnosperms and are also seed-bearing plants and rely on many different pollinators to distribute their seeds. The evolutionary step that angiosperms took was to enclose the ovule in an ovary to protect the female gametes. The ovule develops into a seed and the ovary develops into a fruit, which means that angiosperms are fruit-bearing plants.
Bryophytes are completely dependent on water to reproduce. The female and male gametes are delicate and can easily dry out, and the sperm have to have water to swim in to find the egg cell, and so are only released if the moss is wet. Pteridophytes are less dependent on water because they have roots and vascular tissue, but it can only germinate and grow in moist places. This is because the sperm cells of ferns still need water to swim to the egg cell.
Gymnosperms have no dependence on water for reproduction because they use the wind as a pollinator. Tiny pollen get blown by the wind onto a naked ovule, which is protected by a cone scale. Therefore, water has no effect on the reproduction process. Angiosperms also have no dependence on water for reproduction. They use animals, or sometimes the wind, to pollinate their seeds. The male gamete is carried inside the pollen tube to the female gamete.
Sexual reproduction requires the fusion of male cells in the pollen grain with female cells in the ovule, and thus requires a male and female for reproduction. Whereas asexual reproduction is a natural cloning. Parts of the plant, such as leaves or stems, produce roots and become an independent plant, and thus only need an individual adult for reproduction. The advantages of sexual reproduction. It allows genetic mixing, increasing variability in a population, therefore allowing species to withstand setbacks or changes in the environment. The disadvantages of sexual reproduction are that the fusion of the egg and sperm cells could be unsuccessful, it may be limited to a certain season, and it is slower than asexual reproduction.
The advantages of asexual reproduction are that if the individual plant is well adapted to an environment, all the offspring of that plant will be equally well suited to their environment. Also, the process is fast because no mate is required. The disadvantages of asexual reproduction are that the offspring are identical to the parent, so all of them will suffer if an unfavorable condition occurs, or if they are affected by a particular disease.
Flowering plants or angiosperms have come to adapt for pollination over time, and this is why these kinds of plants on Earth are the most successful, and they have spread to dominate the land surface. Angiosperms came to rely on animals to carry their male gametes to the ovary. For this to be successful, each flower is made to attract a particular kind of animal by using its variety of colors. The use of animals to carry the male gametes is more reliable and less wasteful than wind. Honeybees often come to mind first when people think of pollinators. However, many different animals, including other insects, other bee species, butterflies, beetles, flies, some birds, and some bats are pollinators. Many flowers use colors to attract insects, birds, and bees. Some have ultraviolet marks that can be seen by insects but are invisible to the human eye.